This speaker changed my life. It removed the translation layer when I'm mixing and mastering because I know what I'm hearing is exactly how it's going to translate to other systems. And being able to spend some time tailoring the DSP to my room has made these the only studio monitors I use anymore. These allow me to work so much quicker. It allows me a level of resolution and depth I didn't know was achievable. I can't stop talking about these bad boys, so pour yourself a drink, pull up a chair, and let's go.
Hi, it's Von Hertzog. I'd like to welcome you back to the Social Club, my analog digital hybrid studio. Today I want to talk to you about these speakers, the King RO4Y MKIII speaker kit from Seas in Norway. I built these out to be my new studio monitors. You might have seen the build video. If you didn't, link here. But watch this video first and see if it's something you might be interested in building out. And if it is, watch that video. I show you every step. I break it down into 40 steps, some of them optional, but everything increases the quality of the speaker. So I did all 40 steps, and here they are. They sound amazing. Absolutely amazing. They've changed my world. So why are these speakers worth 5 times what they cost to build? There's a lot of reasons, but I'm just going to name my few favorite ones, and you'll see why building these out is such a smart move. If you have anywhere from $3,000 to $10,000 or $15,000 to spend on monitors, watch this video. And if you want to save a little money on your studio monitors and build them out yourself like I did, watch the build video. It will show you every step of the way, all 40 steps, everything you need to know. And now I have speakers that can rival $10,000 and $15,000 speakers, but even better than those, it's tailored to my room, and those aren't going to be. But this allows me to go in and edit the DSP myself. So if you have a reference microphone, you too can edit these to your space to get them as flat and even as you need them. It's amazing. I'll show you the results I got from them. So why are these speakers worth 5 times the cost of the parts? Because the people making those parts are the same people supplying your favorite studio monitors parts, Seas in Norway. They're providing all the drivers for Ex Machina. They're providing the drivers for Amphion. So the quality level is there. And if you're looking to spend that kind of money on speakers, this might be a good alternative for you. If you only have $3,000, $4,000 to spend, you can get these built out on your own for that amount of money with really good parts. And if you maybe aren't so handy and you don't want to build them out yourself, Vince and I at Inclined Fidelity are building these out. So that's an option too. So we know that these are 3-way speakers. So let's talk about what frequency range each speaker is set to handle. The subwoofer handles everything from 20 Hertz up to about 210 Hertz. At that point, it gets handed off to the mid-range. The mid-range takes it from about 210 to about 1880. From 1880 Hertz on up, it's the tweeter. So that's how the frequencies get divided. By asking each driver to only play in its comfort zone, everything works out nicer. Every speaker is doing its job. By crossing the mid-range over above 200 Hertz, the mid-range cone itself kind of acts like a waveguide for the tweeter. And by not passing through anything under 200, you're keeping the movement of that mid-range cone minimal so that the waveguide stays steady and everything sounds great. That's why these things are so good. And so by having each speaker only play within its comfort zone, and by having them then also time aligned so that they're getting to your ear at the same point, it does wonders for your phase that I can't describe. It's phenomenal. When you sit there, they're holographic. You have to hear it to understand it. I can't really get it to you any other way. Having the sub built into these things is a game changer, having it that close to you. And also, using coaxial speakers. I can't explain enough how much a coaxial speaker helps for imaging. And I hear things better than I've heard them ever. The coaxial is from the Excel line and the subwoofer is from the Extreme line. And they are absolutely amazing. Better parts than you could imagine. Also, the Encore amps from Hypex, which have built-in DSP, 15 biquads per driver. You gotta love it. Individual power for the tweeter, the mid-range, and the subwoofer. And individual time delays to get everything lined up so that it all hits your ear in phase. That is so important. It makes all the difference in the world. All right, let's get down to the components that we're going to be using in this kit and talk about why they were selected. First up, let's talk about the elephant in the room, and I do mean elephant. This thing is enormous. It's 22 pounds. This thing is so heavy. This is the L26 RO4Y. It's a 4 ohm, 10-inch subwoofer that can handle massive amounts of power, 250 RMS, 500 max. We're going to be giving it 250 RMS thanks to this Hypex amplifier. So let's talk about the other components. We got the C18 EN002. Now, this is a coaxial unit, meaning there's a tweeter inside the mid-range. So this is a point source driver, meaning all the sound emanates from one point source, and that's back here. So everything's time aligned. It's going to sound absolutely phenomenal once we get it dropped in there. You connect to the mid-range here, you connect to the tweeter here. We have the appropriate tabs thanks to the Matasound kit that I picked up, the accessory kit. And this is the amp, the Hypex FA253 Fusion amp. Now this uses Encore modules, which are absolutely amazing, super low distortion, very high signal and noise. Now, the kit offers two different amplifiers, the 503 or the 253. I went with the 253. Both of them are 3-channel amps. Both of them are going to give 100 watts to the tweeter. The real difference is this gives 250 watts by 2, and the 503 gives 500 watts by 2. But the 503 has a fan in it. This has no fan. This uses the normal vents here for convection cooling. The problem with the fan for me is I'm going to be in the studio using these as my studio monitors. I cannot worry about having the fan kick on when I'm in critical listening. I can't be worried about, oh, is that noise I'm hearing the fan? Oh, is the fan going to kick on? I really need to be able to hear right now. I can't deal with it. I'm too neurotic to have that always in the back of my head. So I went with this, which is still going to give this the RMS power that it wants to reach its maximum potential. And it's perfectly matched with these as well. So this is my kit. You might want to go with the 503 depending on your setup. Maybe you want the bigger amp. I don't know. I don't want the fan. I don't want the noise. So I'm going with the 253. No regrets. So with these three main components, we're going to build the best speaker you've ever heard. So these speakers were designed by Håvard Solin at Seas in Norway. He's on the product development team, and he designed this a while back. I can't find any information on the MK1 version of the speaker, but the MK2 version I found in about 2016, I think it was released, 2015 or 2016. The King RO4Y MK2 kit was released. Now, the big difference between the MK2 and the MK3 is the amplifier. In the MK2, the amplifier only had 2 channels, so they used a passive crossover on the coaxial speaker to separate the frequencies for the mid-range and the tweeter. In the MK3, they're using a 3-channel amp, either the 253 or the 503. In both cases, it's a 3-channel Hypex amp with DSP correction, 15 biquads per channel. So you really have a lot of leeway to get in there and really mess with these things and get them perfect for your room. And these aren't just any amplifiers from Hypex. These are their Encore modules. So they have 10 times the resolution of the Hypex UCD modules. So they're upping their own standard by 10 times for these things. And the resolution and clarity and signal to noise is amazing. 32-bit DAC chip built in, analog, digital, balanced, unbalanced. It takes it all. On the MK2 kit, they had rounded corners. They had used a router to round all the corners on the cabinet when they were dealing with the passive crossover. On the new kit, the rounding of the corners is optional because there's enough biquads per channel to deal with any diffraction issues that you don't have to deal with it in the woodworking process. You can deal with it in the correction process. You can still do the rounded corners. They're optional. You're going to be hard pressed to find anything that's going to compete with this. If you have $3,000, $4,000, even $10,000 that you want to spend on studio monitors, if you're in that range of looking at, $3,000 to $10,000 studio monitors, do yourself a favor and build these out or have them built out for you. The quality on them is so high. The flexibility is so high. I talked in my build video about how these have digital inputs. It has a built-in 32-bit DAC chip It's phenomenal. And you can send it a digital signal. This can be an all-in-one hi-fi device for you. So if you only have like $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, you're looking to get into hi-fi, you don't have a DAC, this has it all built in. You don't need all that stuff. Both the DAC chip and the analog to digital chip are both made by ACAM, and they sound absolutely phenomenal. So you have options. If you want to run this with a digital source, you can. If you want to run it with an analog source, you can. I'm using a balanced XLR in these, and they sound amazing. They're a revelation. They have made all the difference in the world to me. I mix so much quicker now. I hear everything at once. These speakers remove the translation layer for me. And let me explain what that means. Every engineer, when they're mixing or mastering, is filtering things through their head and trying to imagine what it's going to translate to on other devices. Maybe, how's this going to come through on a cell phone speaker? Or what will this sound like coming through TV speakers or a sound bar, right? All different things that are valid considerations when you're in the mixing and mastering process. This is the first time I can say ever that I don't have alternate monitors set up. You know, I have a pair of headphones that I check on, but these monitors are the only ones I need. And the reason is they're that good. They're that flat, and they give me such a detailed, dynamic response. Everything I hear in the social club is going to translate everywhere else in the world because I'm hearing it as it's recorded. It's not hyping it up. These aren't adding fluff to it. You might hear a snoring bulldog. Ralphie's in the studio. These aren't adding anything to the sound. They're not fluffing it up. They're not warming it. They're not making it digital or brittle. They're just revealing what's there. And as a studio monitor, that's what you want. You need something to show you the recording. Sometimes you see a studio with 3 pairs of speakers set up. You've seen this studio with 3 pairs of speakers set up before. And that's because each one of those pairs of speakers is giving me something different so I can unlock that translation layer, right? One speaker, like the NS10s, are gonna amplify the mid-range and show me if anything is an issue there and I need to deal with it. Cool. These speakers have completely removed the translation layer for me. I'm not over here wondering how these are gonna sound because I know what I'm hearing here is what it's gonna sound like everywhere else, played back. So these things have done a lot for me. I really love them. If you didn't see the build video and you think these are gonna be something that you wanna build out, watch that video. But watch this one to the end. I'm gonna show you measurements of these speakers in the room. I'm going to show you information about the parts, and I'm gonna give you my thoughts on why these things are so good, why they're so amazing, and how I can back it up with actual data and information. When I sit in the sweet spot here, the sweet spot's huge. Like I can move my head around and the image moves with me. It doesn't fall out or break down or fall apart. It just sounds like I'm in the space where the music is coming from, as if it were live. The dynamics on these speakers are great. Like there's no worry. Like if you crank these things and you're listening to something with a lot of dynamic range, you're gonna hear and feel those impacts because the sub moves a lot of air. You got 2 10-inches sitting, you know, somewhat close to you. They're moving a good amount of air. A lot of things down here vibrate when I really crank these things up. I'm no stranger to coaxial speakers. I used to have the PreSonus Scepter S8s, and they sounded great. You know, they lacked a little bit on the low end for me. You know, that was always my issue. Even though they had an 8-inch woofer, there wasn't much below 50 hertz. And that's not an issue with these at all. But the advantage to the coaxial is there. And the thing I could say about those Scepters is they imaged really well. They sounded crystal clear and clean. And I liked them for that. These are an upgrade by a large margin. You know, all the drivers involved are much higher quality. I'm not trying to say anything bad about the PreSonus Scepters. For their price point, they're amazing at what they do. But at this price point, I mean, I'm competing with the big boys. I'm in the 10, 15 grand range with these guys. I think it's often unfair to compare speaker A and speaker B when the parts aren't anywhere close in cost. Because if you have a speaker with $100 in parts or a speaker with $3,000 in parts, do you really think they're going to sound similar? No, they're not. So you can't compare them all the time. You can't say, but this is an active studio monitor. Why can't I compare it to this active studio monitor? Because they're not using anywhere close to the same parts. And until you're on a somewhat level playing field, you can't really compare the things. People always ask, what's the best studio monitor? I don't know. What's your budget? Your budget will dictate what the best studio monitor you can get is. And that's the truth of it. Monitoring is something that people don't always spend a lot of money on. It's an afterthought, because for a lot of people, they're just musicians and they're looking to make the music, and then they, I have to mix it and master it. It's an afterthought, right? If your ear isn't tuned to it, I have a saying, refinements only matter to those refined enough to notice them. Refinements are lost on people that don't see with that level of detail or quality or whatever, right? Certain things will go over people's heads, and that's just the reality of life. You know what I mean? Not everyone out. That's why audiophiles are an interesting community, because it's people who all have that ability to really tune in and listen and pull the nuance out of things, right? That's what audiophiles are chasing, right? We're chasing that dragon of listening back to that perfect sound and enjoying it. I'm not chasing anymore. I found them. And now, if I really want to, get lost in some music, I come down here, lower the lights, or I'll sit in the sweet spot, I'll close my eyes, and then I just let the music play. And it's an experience. Again, being able to have the full frequency spectrum represented by these speakers is amazing. I love these things. And I want to show you why. So let's look at some of the graphs and see why these speakers are as good as they are. The people at Seas in Norway were kind enough to measure this speaker in an anechoic chamber. So that means you're only hearing back the speaker. There's no room interference. The anechoic chamber cancels out any room interference. So you're only hearing back what the speaker plays. So I'm going to show you the 3 different presets that these speakers come with. So you can have a stepped up bass response, a stepped down bass response, or a level bass response. And depending on the room you're in, you might find one preset works better for you than the other. And if you find that none of them work exactly how you need, get that reference mic, get in there yourself and measure, start tweaking. It's not rocket science. It's somewhat complicated, but it's not rocket science. If you understand how the frequency spectrum works, you can do it. One thing I always like to point out when people are talking about sound treating places is, once you get down to a certain point, you can't mitigate bass notes. You just can't. That's the reality of it. Did you ever notice, if you're in a big studio, there is a hallway. There's a door you walk through, and then about a hallway until you get to another door to go into the control room. Do you know why that is? That's an air gap. That is put there to help soundproof the studio, so outside sounds can't come in and the inside sounds have a harder time going out. That air gap is what's necessary, because here's the reality of it. A 30 hertz waveform is 38 feet long. That's wider than your room most of the time, right? So mitigating bass notes is one of the hardest things. With a DSP, it became doable. And I have a null in my room that I can't avoid at 31 hertz. Everything below 30 comes through nice. Everything above about 34 comes out nice, but there's that null there, and I couldn't avoid it. Every room is going to have those nulls in the bass frequencies because the waveforms get too long. So try and put your null in a place where it's least offensive, right? And that's what I've been doing. This is from the PDF included on the Seas website. The above figures show the on-axis measurement of preset 1. These actually come with 3 presets. When we get down here, you can see the preset 1 is in blue, which is the flat response. Preset 2 is the green one, which has a very stepped down bass response. Maybe it's good for once the kids go to bed, or you don't want to disturb the neighbors. And preset 3 is the stepped up bass response. This is what worked better for me in this room because I'm in a really big room. And having this stepped up on the EQ actually brought it to flat. Preset 3 is what works for me in this space. These are all measured in an anechoic chamber, so you're only getting what the speaker's putting out, and you're not getting any room interference in these measurements. So that's why these are so important. When we come back up here and we look at this again, let's see what we're talking about. The above figure shows the on-axis measurements of preset 1. As can be viewed, the low end is extended, rolling off nicely to a negative 12 dB point at around 20 hertz.
The dotted red line shows the system with the mid-range inverted, displaying deep notches around each crossover point, which indicates good phase coherence between the drivers with 1/12 octave smoothing. Here you can see the dotted red lines when they put the mid-range out of phase and how it flips and sucks out in the nulls. That means that the phase coherence is really good at the crossover point, because if you flip it, it sucks all the way out, down nearly 20 dB. And this one's down about 23 dB. So that's fantastic. Great phase coherence, and it matters. This is showing you the off-axis response here. So you can see in 15-degree increments, and you can tell from the key here which is which. These things stay pretty even regardless of how far off-axis you move. It doesn't tend to get uneven and wonky like some speakers do. There's a little dip here around 4 or 5K, but in all fairness, those are the harshest frequencies and the ones that really kind of shred your ears. So it's not an unwelcome thing. So let's go back down here and talk about these presets a bit. So the listening room and placement. High quality stands should be used to bring the tweeter approximately to ear level or slightly above. Even in the best listening room, it is important to determine the positions where the loudspeakers will perform optimally. Placing the cabinets too close to the walls or corners will result in more powerful bass, but may also cause response irregularities in the bass mid-range area. Some experimentation is recommended in order to find cabinet positions that result in good tonal balance and freedom from coloration. So this is just saying, try your speakers in different positions to see where the room interferes with them the least. After finding a good placement of the speaker, then there can be almost endless possibilities to fine-tune the sound balance with the Hypex DSP. And this is absolutely true. So I want to show you the measurement that I got from both of them summed in this space. So check this out. All right. This is the measurement of these speakers in this room after I fine-tuned the DSP. Now, each one of these gray lines is 1 decibel. So, I mean, look at how flat we are here. We're pretty much within 1 dB almost the entire way. This null here is my room null. And you know how they were suggesting, hey, try and place it in a place with the least amount of interference. I don't want this null any further up in the frequency spectrum, or it's going to start, affecting bass notes. Down here at 31 Hertz, it's the lowest note that we're going to, so it's pretty much just rumble at this point. But there are hip hop and sub songs that use this frequency a lot in bass notes. However, it's so minimal here because 30 Hertz, I'm still okay. And then 36 Hertz, I'm back up. So it's just this null here at essentially 32, 31 and a half, 32. But these things are magnificent. And I know that in my build video, I said adding the sound deadening was optional to the cabinets, but let me show you why I love it the way I do. Look at this waterfall plot for this speaker. Look at how dead that cabinet is. Look at how the resonances fall off immediately. There's very few cabinet resonances in here. And this down here is where my room null is. And that's where everything goes inverted and wonky. So yeah, everything from 20 to 30 Hertz, which is sometimes inaudible depending on who's listening. Everything from 20 to 30 Hertz is still there, but the time domain on it is crazy. Now, something I like to bring up, a 30 Hertz waveform is 38 feet long. So you can't mitigate those bass notes. All you can do is work around them, which is what I've done. And these things are amazing. I can't tell you how fast and clean they sound. But actually, I'm going to have someone else tell you a little later. But as you can see, these things did remarkable for me. Very flat. This is why I can mix so quickly. This is why I can master so cleanly, because I hear everything. And I smoothed out some of the tweeter resonances. And this thing is just phenomenal in this space, in this room. Absolutely love it. All right, here we are. I'd like to welcome Mason Embry to the Social Club. He is a Nashville-based professional musician for hire. If you're ever looking for someone who plays the keys, he tickles the ivories, something nasty.
which is a good thing. I'm going to hand it over to Mason, let him tell you a little bit about himself, and then we are going to discuss these speakers because he has a good seasoned ear, and he's the kind of person I want listening to this so that we can have a great discussion. So, Mason, tell us about yourself.
All right, happy to. Yeah, this is really exciting for me because so many of my interests all come together in one magnificent room, and we always have a great time when we talk about this stuff. Yeah, I've been a professional musician since I was about 15 years old. I'm a piano player, and that was kind of how I was trained, was as a pianist, in all different styles of music. So it was always really important for me to have a fantastic listening room, to have fantastic gear, and to know that what I was hearing was the truth, so when I'm mixing, I can trust what I'm hearing. Yeah, I played on the road for 4 years with a country artist named Chris Young, and I was out with him full time.
I saw him on Good Morning America.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I made the circuit, in terms of some of the morning shows and the Kimmel and things like that. Yep. And so that was really awesome to be able to do that kind of stuff. And now I mostly record with my jazz trio, which is the Mason Embry Trio. And we record several times a year and put our music out on all the streaming services and elsewhere.
Link in description.
Yes, link in description. And we've had some success there, so it's really great to be able to still do that. And when I come to hang out with Vaughn in his lair, my interests converge, which is I'm a total engineer nerd when it comes to both computers and hardware, and I definitely consider myself an audiophile, which like a home theater junkie, and still do some mixing and some critical listening, and so it all converges when I'm here.
Yeah, and I always love when he comes over because it's awesome to have another seasoned ear that I can discuss things with. I love to nerd out about speakers and all this kind of stuff. So like last year when he was home, I was showing him some of the MTM studio monitors I was working on. But this time, guys, we're in a whole other world here with these things. So I want to talk to him about the King RO4Y MKIII speaker kit that I built out as my studio monitors, and then I tuned to this space in this room with a reference mic. I let Mason sit here a couple days ago, and again, just before we started filming, I brought up Tidal. I let him pick anything he wanted to listen to, and so he listened to his own reference songs that he knows well, and he got a chance to listen here to these speakers in this environment. So what did you hear having listened to your favorite stuff here in this space with these speakers?
Yeah, I mean, to go back to what you said a minute ago, sadly, I only get to see you about once a year, and every time it's like, oh, you got to hear, the speakers that I've got going, and every year it's better, and every year I'm like, it can't be any better, can it? And sure enough, this year...
last year was going to be hard to beat, these things are just another animal.
Exactly. Right? Yeah, last year I felt that's going to be hard to beat because it really sounded fantastic. This year, you beat it, man. I'm looking forward to next year. I don't know. But,
man.
Yeah, good luck.
I'm going to have to build out that. So there's another option for these where you can turn them into floor standing speakers by extending it another 50 centimeters down, and you put two passive radiators in the side, both 10 inches, so it extends super low then.
Yeah,
you don't need a separate sub for your home theater. Two of these as your fronts.
So next year's going to be fun when I hear the upgrade. But yeah, I can't imagine an upgrade. So you asked what I hear. Yeah, I played some of my favorite material. And I know this is the kind of stuff that everyone says, like, I heard things I never heard before, which it really is true. And it's hard to explain how that happens.
They're just revealing. So like all of a sudden, like, where things might have been a little hazy before, you didn't know they were hazy. You just thought that's what it sounded like. Right. Like I said, I've made music on these and I've noticed textures in some of my sounds I didn't understand were there. Mm-hmm. They've always been there, but like you need the right speaker to kind of lay it bare and reveal it all.
Right. So it's really hard to use words to describe this stuff, but I'll try. But one thing I noticed is that it feels like every instrument takes up its own space, and you can clearly hear the distinction between every instrument.
Like the soundstage, right?
So exactly. Like, yeah. It is panning, but it's way more than just panning, because even with bad speakers, you can sort of hear something's kind of over there and something's kind of over there. But this was different. It's like I could clearly hear every note that this musician was playing, but also this one, and also this one, and also when the reverb's slightly higher on one speaker than the other, or I just noticed that there's an extra kick drum out of nowhere in this song that I've been listening to for years, but I just haven't heard it with this kind of clarity to pick out that nuance and those details.
And I think part of what creates that is that these are all time aligned to where, you know, like the tweeter and the mid-range are delayed so that they line up in time with the sub. So everything gets to your ear in phase. And when that happens, that means that like nothing's getting canceled out like it normally would. And if you have a properly treated room, nothing should be getting canceled out, right?
Right.
And so we are just able to hear things clearer, and it's bonkers to me.
I'm kind of a typical audiophile that I like to put Steely Dan on. Steely Dan, they always kind of emphasize a very clean, crystal clear mix, and they're very, let's just say persnickety to be kind about it, about their mixes. They're very notorious for that. And I like to put on some of the older stuff, like, of course, the classic Asia records, one of my favorites. But then it's weird to call this newer because it's still 23 years ago. But the Two Against Nature record, right? Gaslighting Abbey, those tunes. And they're very different. And I can hear the difference between something that's mixed in the 70s with a incredibly high attention to detail on the mix and something that was mixed around 2000 with an incredibly high detailed attention to the mix. And they're very different. Both sound phenomenal. And
yeah, you could hear like the sound profile change like in the recording itself.
Right, like, exactly. Yeah. And I trusted that I was just hearing the different choices made by the mixer and producers. I wasn't hearing anything funny coming from the cabinets or the room, nothing like that. I'm also a big fan of like kind of moody pop rock, you know, Death Cab for Cutie, that kind of thing. And I just played one of those songs, how do you pronounce the name of this record? Kintsugi? Anyway, I just listened to that, and I'm just hearing all that distinction between the parts, just like we talked about. Also, I definitely like to go back to, you know, there's a Harry Connick record called Songs I Heard, which I think is so cool because it's basically he grew up and was able to make the kind of record he wanted. So he recorded Willy Wonka tunes and the Sound of Music tunes and like Wizard of Oz stuff.
It's a self-indulgence record.
It's self-indulgence, which is similar to what I've done in some of my music, is just record stuff I liked from when I was a kid. But that record sounds phenomenal, and I always check it out when I'm here.
I talked earlier in the video about how, you know, you can't always compare speaker A and B because the quality of the parts matters so much. And the speakers that I showed you last year versus the speakers that I built now, first of all, those were passive, but the parts in those, you know, were maybe $600, and the parts for these are $3,000. So they aren't, you know, similar in that regard. Plus, what the active monitors and the DSP can do in these things are just absolutely insane. Yeah, I don't know that I can really improve on these all that much, you know, maybe some floor standards or whatever, but these things are bonkers.
I read something that said, if what we're going for is transparency, meaning if what we're going for is the truth, then there comes a point where you're hearing the truth. And how can you hear more the truth? I'm not sure. But of course, every year you prove me wrong, so I can hear more of the truth.
Always uncovering more truth.
Yeah, uncovering more truth. That's what I go for. So a few years ago, I was just trying to find a new pair of headphones. And up until that point, I had just used whatever was in the studio. But I wanted to have my headphones. And I didn't want to spend $5,000 or something. So I kept going back to the audio store, and I tried them. I was like, this one, there's too much hype in this one. You know, it's like a smiley face curve, or this one's just boomy for the sake of boom, or the mid-range is dead in this one, or this one's all sizzle. And it took me a long time to find something that was close to the truth. And that's what I'm looking for. So a reasonably flat curve, you know, I don't mind a little accentuation here and there, but for the most part, I want to hear what the producer produced or what the mixer mixed. And if I hear that this song sounds really different from this one, I want to know that that's because that's the choice that was made in the studio. And the truth and, you know, a flat reference allows me to hear clearly what that producer intended.
Yeah, and that's why these things have done so amazingly well for me, is you need to be able to hear those nuances in the recording. You don't want to warm something up that doesn't need warming, you know, or throw a blanket over something that doesn't need a blanket thrown over it if it's just your speakers that are giving you the issues. So being able to hear things so clearly and at a reference level has just been a game changer for me. I work so much quicker. My clients are happier because they're all going like, what did you change? And it's like, well, I can hear now at once. I'm not checking through 3 sets of studio monitors anymore. I'm just listening to the one, and it removed the translation layer. So I just hear it and I know like, oh, it's even. Like I played Techmaster PEB for Mason, which is like a very bass heavy music from the 90s. But I did it because bass notes are something where, there's such a difference in between the notes. Like usually when you're listening back on a subwoofer, the response has 3-4 dB up and down, in fluctuation in it because the notes are so long and they're so hard to mitigate in your room. Being able to get them this flat and hear all those bass notes in their proper space, properly, mixed and mastered, it just saves us so much time. I'm just not fighting through
for sure
the music anymore, the space. It's just there. So yeah, these things have been awesome for me.
Yeah, you so often when you're listening to bass, I mean, this is really dependent on the room, but also the speakers. But some notes will just be gone, and some notes will just rattle the whole room, and you don't hear that kind of smooth distinction between notes in the low end. You just hear boom, or it disappears. And here, total clarity with every single note on the way down. It was almost strange to hear the bass being that smooth and all the different notes kind of speaking the same,
like evenly represented. Because usually, something ends up poking out. That's why like. The reason that subwoofers sound so loud in a car is because you have that cabin gain, where like the sound is bouncing back and forth. Down here, I've shifted the null down in the room, and these just give me that even information across it. And it's a testament to the Seas subwoofers. Like these Seas subs are so clean and clear. They just sound so detailed in the low end. Like it just gives me detail in the bass notes that I'm not used to hearing. Like it's easier to detect distortion on 808s on these than it ever was before. This just lays it bare and lets me hear it. I love them.
Yeah, I love them too. I wanted to mention that I actually have one buddy. He's a full-time mix guy. That's what he does. He used to produce as well, and he decided he just loves mixing. That's what he does. Every time I go to his house, he's tweaked his setup a little, right?
Never ends.
So it gets a little better every time I go over there. And the last time I went over there, he said on the way up to the studio, he said, yeah, I've just recently kind of reworked things. I got some new speakers. I don't remember what they were, but I got some new speakers, and I got them tuned and calibrated, and I sat down in the sweet spot and I listened, and I heard similar what I like to listen for, which is that truth, that flatness, that every frequency speaking the same. And I haven't heard anything like that until here. And here, this even had like I think what I got here was just a bigger soundstage and like more weight to it. I don't know, maybe just simply because of the power and the size of these speakers. But I really want him to hear these. So I gotta get him up here somehow, man. Yeah.
Or gotta send you back with a pair at some point.
Or that.
These things do sound great. I do love them. They do allow me to mix so much faster. It's interesting because audiophiles and studio folk look for different things in speakers sometimes, where like audiophiles will look for like more of a tailored response that they like.
Yeah, they look for color they like as opposed to just flatness.
As where in the studio you're looking for as flat as you can get it, and so you can trust the playback of it, right? So Mason, what do you have coming up once you get back to Nashville, or what have you had going on in the recent past?
Sure. Well, early next year, I'm going to go back into the studio with my group. I haven't even picked the songs yet, but we definitely going to go record some more singles to put out. But right now, Christmas time's a really good time of year for the jazz musicians, right? This is the one time of year where everybody wants to hear jazz.
Plenty of dinner parties.
Very happy to say that Mason Embry Trio has had some success for, especially Christmas time jazz music. And I don't know the exact day, but any day now, the latest release, this ties in with what I said before about how you do this kind of stuff you listen to as a kid and then you grow up and get to put it out. So I'm just putting out a Vince Guaraldi tune. It's called Christmas is Coming, and you might not know it by name, but it's one of the classic Vince Guaraldi tunes from Charlie Brown's Christmas, right? And it's And so that's coming out in just a few days on Spotify, my own rendition done with my group. Nice. And we generally have a release every, 6 to 8 weeks on there. So cool. It's plenty of material.
Excellent. So check them out. Link in description. So Mason, thank you so much for coming and sitting down here today, listening to these speakers over the course of the past few days and giving me your honest feedback. Because like I said, having another seasoned ear here in the space is one of my favorite things.
Mine too.
It's like literally Christmas, which we're celebrating because he's home for Thanksgiving and won't be for Christmas, so it's Christmas now. Ralph is at our feet. Good
Ralph's
puppy
a good
dog.
boy.
Yeah, Ralph is the best boy. He's been such a good boy.
Looking forward to next year, man. I don't know if you're going to be able to top this.
I don't either. I genuinely don't.
You can try.
Yeah, we'll have to see what they're coming out with, but I'm happy. This has been This is the first time I can remember since I had NS10s where these are my only studio monitors. The NS10s, of course, don't give you anything below 150 really, but at least it's an even roll-off, so you can kind of make judgments. These are like the polar opposite to that, where it's perfect low end. But this is the only ones I use anymore. I don't need a secondary pair. I have some headphones and this
you don't need a sub either. I mean, they get down there.
Yeah, I don't need them. It's built in. So having a three-way that, can still fit on a speaker stand is kind of amazing.
Yeah, for sure.
To get all that in such a compact package.
Yep.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Mason. Thank you for coming over. Fun. Thank you for listening. And don't forget to check out his music. So make sure you click the link in the description. One more thing I wanted to touch on with these speakers is that they are very true regardless of volume. So if you keep the volume level low on these things, you can still mix on them. You can get up close to these speakers and the frequency stays very linear even as the volume drops on it. So if you have a room that's not super well treated, or if you have an issue, mitigating sub 200 hertz frequencies, things under 200, these speakers are great because you can kind of take the room out of it just by getting up on them if you don't have the microphone to do all the DSP. Ralphie's on the move. You can get up close on these, you can mix on them, you can take the room out of the equation, or you can take a reference mic, use the DSP, and dial these things in to be exactly what you need. But I'm done. I'm done searching. These are my studio monitors. They're the only thing I need anymore, and I have no regrets about that. They let me work better, quicker, faster. I've never heard things so clearly. I've never had things so well phase aligned. And it just does wonders for everything I'm doing. So I can't say enough good stuff about it. So what's my final verdict on these speakers? They're amazing. They give me everything I need out of a speaker, and they don't leave me wanting for anything. They're perfectly tailored to my space. I know I can trust them 1,000%. And I've never felt so good sitting down and listening to music because the dynamics are huge. The soundstage is huge. And everything just sounds the way it should in the original recording. And it's not showing me anything extra. So that's priceless to me. $3,000 is still a lot of money for a kit, but it is priceless what you get out of it. And it's a small price to pay for the quality level that it puts me on and how it allows me to work. So I can't say enough good stuff. Please check out Seos in Norway. Check out their other speakers and drivers that they have out. Check out Ex Machina, who has taken this design to a whole other level with their different materials and their own proprietary DSP. So check out Ex Machina. And of course, check out Amphion, who's always awesome. But when you see those price tags, just remember, you can get on that same level with this kit for a third of the cost, or a fifth of the cost. It's worth it. Check it out. Get into it. In the end of the day, if I can do my job quicker, better, and easier, I'm happier. These speakers make me happier. So if you want to get happy too, go watch my build video and find out how to do this. Find out how to build these things, because they're amazing. Like, I don't want to keep this as my own little secret. These things are too good to keep secret. You have to listen to them. So build yourself out a pair. Go to Matasound, order a pair, and get to building. Or go to inclinefidelity.com, order a pair, and we'll build them out and send them to you. So you have options. Think about it. I do want to thank Mason Embry for stopping by again. Please check out the Mason Embry Trio. Check out his music, link in description. Thank you for coming along and watching this video. Please give me a like and subscribe. If you didn't like and subscribe already, please do. It helps. I try not to pest you about it, but it helps. And hopefully that takes care of it. So until next time, this has been Von Hertzog from the Social Club.